I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a spy. I don't hold any secrets. I never worked for a federal government or the military. I'm just a private citizen, and I've been given the same diagnosis as our diplomats stationed in Cuba.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor, where we're all just trying to survive in a rough world.
Joel, you really are touchy, but I'm the little old lady and nobody says bad things. Joel, please open my bottle.
Carm, we started the show. You're asking me to open your water bottle. I do see two hands on your arms, but
but I
let me
have
get
very
that for you.
weak.
And it segues right into it. You can get your straw and you can drink at the beginning of the show here. But it's a perfect segue into what I was going to start with. This is officially episode 63. And the reason I know that is when I got home from work, my other job, at midnight last night, I then had to post today's YouTube episode, and it doesn't appear magically on Spotify or anything else. I had to post it there. And I was given a suggestion to number each episode. So it sounds simple, but you have to go into every episode and re-edit it and republish it. And there are 63 episodes, and that took me about an hour and 45 minutes to do that. And I also added the brand new slick-looking icon to each one of those. So while you were snoring and I was prepping for this podcast, that's what was going on. And this is my reward. Larry Levin writes to us. As you know, we've done a bunch of episodes on the Dan Markel murder case, which is doing very well. People are showing an extreme interest in it. Guys like Larry Levin or Levin. This is his comment on YouTube. I'm only going to read part of it. I can't believe how rude Joel is with his mom and how forgiving she is. He outright insults her 3 or 4 times, telling her that she's having a senior moment, reminding her that he, not she, is in charge. On the other hand, when she does speak, she usually has good points and unique insights. Still, I'm fascinated with his trial. And then there were some interesting comments and analysis from everyone. Gee, thanks, Larry. It's hilarious because you're almost 83.
I'll be 83. Today is June 15th, August 7th. If I live that long, I'm 83, so it's not exaggerating.
My wife famously describes herself as the damsel in distress.
I never played the damsel in distress.
No, you do not. But it irritates the crap out of me that I'm getting hate mail and you're getting, I do all the work. No one sees behind the scenes what's going on here.
That's
you come in your shawl and your bag.
Be 83 and you will be
You ask me
better.
to open water bottles and all the hate mail comes my way. What about a little love? The only person that gave me love is
love.
I Got Donuts. Anyway, Carm.
You get love from your dog called Ethel.
By the way, we're doing 2 episodes this week and 2 episodes next week because it's the summer. I'm going to be away a little bit and I want to keep this going. And all you say to me, Joy, I am not doing this. I am not doing this.
I said I cannot do it twice a week.
You're doing it twice a week this week and next week, and you have absolutely no choice, okay? And it's also, I've never seen you happier than the hour and a half you're in here where you get out of the quote-unquote nursing home in Miami Beach. But today, we have a very fascinating guest. His name is Dr. Len Ber. He is a medical doctor. He also claims to be suffering from Havana Syndrome. We had a guest on, a good, long, old friend of mine, Mark Polymeropoulos, was in the CIA for 26 years, and he was diagnosed with Havana Syndrome. He was targeted when he was on a business trip in Moscow. What makes Dr. Len Ber so interesting is he's not a CIA agent. He's not a federal employee. He's an average, regular Joe, if you will, an average Len. Interesting character, very intelligent. I was a little reluctant to do this episode because there's a lot of crazy people in this world, but he sent me one, what is the word I'm looking for? Citation after the other. He sent me detailed analysis of his illness and diagnoses from medical
By the way,
physicians, medical doctors.
Our official party line, did we interview him already or not yet?
We have not.
Okay, then I'll act accordingly.
Okay. He's coming up next, Dr. Len Ber with Havana Syndrome on The Main Schmooze.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. It's time now for the main schmooze.
So, Carm, I know you're familiar with this, and I'll tell you why I know you're familiar with this. We are about to speak to someone who suffers from Havana Syndrome. And who else do you know that suffers from it?
Mark Polymeropoulos, who was interviewed here.
He was interviewed here. How many letters is in his last name?
I think you said 14.
14 letters in Polymeropoulos. And I know that because I've known Mark Polymeropoulos since I was in second grade. But Mark Polymeropoulos went on to be one of the most decorated CIA officers in the United States of America. I believe he was in charge of something like 3,000 agents before he retired after, quote unquote, coming out of the shadows after 26 years in the service. But he was diagnosed with Havana Syndrome. We'll get into that a little bit more. But someone else who has been diagnosed with what is known as Havana Syndrome or directed energy waves is Dr. Len Ber. How are you, Doctor?
I'm doing well. How are you, Joe?
Doing great. Thank you for joining us. So let me just tell the audience quickly who you are, and then we will get into a conversation about all this. Dr. Ber is a Russian-trained or former Soviet Union-trained medical doctor. I believe you were an endocrinologist and practiced for close to 10 years in the former Soviet Union before coming to the United States in the 1990s, now working in regulatory affairs in the food industry. Dr. Ber is now a naturalized U.S. citizen, and he was diagnosed by a doctor while he lives near Chicago. He was diagnosed by a doctor, Michael Hoffer, who is based here where we are in Miami with Havana Syndrome or directed energy attacks. And what makes this so interesting is Dr. Ber is not in the military and is not, as far as I know, an ambassador or diplomat of any kind. How are you, Dr. Ber? Is all that true?
That is all true.
Okay.
That's what I think is so fundamentally different about my story, that I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a spy. I don't hold any secrets. I never worked for a federal government or the military. I'm just a private citizen. And I've been given the same diagnosis as our diplomats stationed in Cuba.
So just getting back to Mark Polymeropoulos for a minute, because I think it's important. He happens to be a very longtime friend of mine who I was not in touch with because he was doing all sorts of spy things that he couldn't let anyone know about. He was in Afghanistan before the war. He was in Iraq before the war. But I believe it was 2016, he was working and he happened to be in your home country. He was in Moscow and suddenly fell very ill. He describes being in a hotel room, getting horrendous vertigo, headache, vomiting. And he was a high-ranking spy, if you will. Fast forward, he comes back to the United States. He is diagnosed with what has now become known as Havana Syndrome, and he's actually seeking treatment. He gets treatment regularly now at Walter Reed Medical, which is the finest military hospital in the world outside of Washington, D.C. But again, what is so fascinating about this, Dr. Ber, to me, is you've never been were you in the military in Russia?
Just for a short period of time. It was part of the medical doctor training, just a little, I was studying the sort of the military side of things over the course of the medical school. And then you have like a 2-month military outing to get you lieutenant. You graduate as lieutenant, but it's a medical service. So
I have questions.
No secrets, no spying things.
I have questions for you. And obviously, I shouldn't even state this, but I'm going to state it. If my questions are inappropriate or you are uncomfortable answering them, just say, I take the fifth on this one. I'm not answering. But I'm going to ask you all sorts of questions. First of all, I have to know, where were you born?
I was born in a city called Syktyvkar. And this is, if you look at the map of Russia and you see the Ural Mountains kind of cutting across north to south, it's just on the west side of the Ural Mountains. And this is where my family ended up. So my family, on my father's side, they used to live in Prussia, which was before the war, part of Germany. And then Poland was invaded. Then this pact between Hitler and Stalin happened, and
it's maybe my professional deviation. But I like to, when I talk to somebody, I like to know a little bit about their background. If you have any question about where I was born and so forth, I'm open to answer you also. You can question me. But you were born in this town, in a large family, in a small family. How many siblings did you have?
I have an older brother. All my family now lives in Germany because they recognize my father's citizenship, but it's we're a Jewish family. I have Jewish mother and father. I had a great aunt who also survived the Holocaust, and that's why I told Joel that you remind me of her so much.
Thank you.
Also in spirit. Also very much.
And Dr. Ber has headaches from targeted energy attacks, and I get headaches from you, Carm.
Yeah, now my energy is very targeted at you.
And now comes the hate mail. But Carm, let me bring up something here that's interesting, and we're going to bounce around here a little bit.
Yeah, we are not very methodical. We will let you tell your part of the story. And I saw the interview you gave on YouTube, and I am not completely coming in here completely like blind.
You actually prepared, which is nice.
No, I'm not prepared, but I'm sort of a little aware.
Look at that. She finally admits it. So March 2022, which was 2 or 3 months ago, I'm bad at math, the director of the National Intelligence, the DNI head, Averald Haines, and the director of a little group called the CIA, issued a statement. This is March 2022, and I got some of this information from Dr. Ber himself, so I appreciate that. They write, "We continue to pursue complementary efforts to get to the bottom of anomalous health incidents, or AHIs, and to deliver access to world-class care for those affected. We are making progress in both areas. We recently shared intelligence community, IC, coordinated analysis that primarily focus on the question of attribution And today they write, we're pleased to share the declassified executive summary of the IC experts panel report, which we'll have Dr. Ber fill us in a little bit about. But Dr. Ber, the obvious $64,000 question, and I know it's the question that people are going to ask me, and I hope you don't find offense, but of the 7 billion people on planet Earth, why are you among those who were targeted by one of these energy attacks? Why do you think you were actually targeted? You're not in the military, you're not former KGB, you're not a diplomat.
I don't know. And that's why I want my case to be investigated. And I don't want to have to make any speculations because I'm one of the few civilians really actually properly diagnosed with this. And I know that there are people, at least, presenting themselves, and I have no reason not to believe, because they describing the same experience. They just don't have the time. Sometimes it's a matter of money to fly yourself to Miami and spend a day and do vestibular tests and get properly diagnosed. And so I have to be really careful about what statements I make. But quite honestly, this is something that's been done to you remotely. Absolutely. I have no idea who is doing it to me, and I don't know why they're doing it to me. I have some thoughts, I have some speculations, but I would rather not share. I want my government to investigate it and protect me from this.
Okay. I have a number of questions related to the Havana Syndrome. One of them is, were ever children involved in?
Yes, there have been children victims, but I believe they're all children. As far as I know, and Dr. Ber, you know better than me, I believe most of the children, if not all, were related somehow to diplomats. I don't know if there have been civilian children affected.
We had a connection problem, but yes, I think I understood your question. I think the children are family members of the federal employees who's been attacked.
Okay, now next question. The next question. I feel like I am now the FBI, but the next question is, when did it happen? When? Do you know the moment, your age at the moment, where were you, and so forth?
So I'm 56 now. It happened 3 years ago, almost to the date. So I was diagnosed 2 years ago, and it was 3 years since it started. And when it started, I felt this unusual vibration, something I've never experienced before, sounds that I never heard, that nobody around me can hear. And I asked my partner, I asked, do you feel this vibration? This is like my entire body, from head to toe, and my head is vibrating. And it's very unpleasant. It makes you nauseous, makes you dizzy and tired. And he said, no, I don't feel anything. And this is the same thing that happened to Cuban diplomats. There were people in the same apartment who felt it and who didn't.
So you initially felt it in the apartment? Initially, you felt it in your home?
In my home, yes.
Okay, that was the question. I just kind of had to have an image.
And was this over a course of time, or was this a one-time hit and you've been affected ever since?
Ever since. And my attacks are still ongoing. I just yesterday afternoon, I had a very serious attack that made me dysfunctional for several hours.
But just to be clear, you're having continuing side effects, or yesterday, as the example, you feel like you were targeted again yesterday?
Daily. This is a daily occurrence. Right now, this is a daily occurrence. And this is what I wanted to point out. When you talked about Mark Polymeropoulos or the diplomats. I never heard anybody to ask them that question because they're clearly suffering. But are they suffering from these attacks, these continuous episodes, similar to what they experienced in Cuba, or these are just consequences? It's like the CDC called it a biphasic disorder. So the first phase is the trauma, and it went for several months while they were in Cuba, and then they came back and it stopped. And that question was never asked. And I'm really, really curious whether they're still experiencing these attacks, because subjectively you can't miss it. It doesn't feel like anything else that you've ever experienced. And being a physician, I know that there's not a neurological disorder that makes you feel that. So from both subjective and sort of a professional way, I know these are active attacks. So what I'm doing, and I'm begging FBI to investigate, and they already refused twice to investigate it. Because I'm having these daily attacks, and you're trying to figure out who is attacking, how it's done. Here I am in my own home being attacked every day.
So just to be clear, because when I spoke to Mark Polymeropoulos, my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, was that he was attacked on a trip to Moscow. Just one time, maybe it happened multiple times in a hotel. But then he continues this day, years later, to suffer the symptoms. But you're saying that you're being repeatedly attacked, correct?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That my attacks are continuous ever since it started. It would escalate. I was actually taken to an ER with seizures, because directed energy does produce seizure if the intensity is high enough. And I experienced that. It's called Bucha effect. It's been well described in the literature. The electromagnetic waves at certain intensity will produce that. You have these vibrating strobe light in your head. You completely disoriented, and I had convulsions. I never lost consciousness, but I was taken to ER. They didn't find anything except elevated calcium, which is actually typical for directed energy attacks, because it attacks the nervous system and knocks out calcium ion out of the synapses, of the connections between the neurons.
Please don't take this the wrong way, but it's a question that has to be asked. And I know people would think this and say, hey, Joel, ask this question. How do you've never been diagnosed as paranoid or schizophrenic or anything like that, correct?
That's the first thing I did when I finally had seizures. I realized how serious it was. I took a month off work to do all the tests, and that included psychiatric evaluation. So my psychiatrist absolutely rejected the paranoid or delusional disorder. No schizophrenia. Nobody actually develops schizophrenia at the tender age of 55, because if you don't develop it by like 30, it's not schizophrenia. And I educated him on showed him the National Academy of Sciences and in other literature and the auditory effects of microwave radiation. There's a lot of literature. There's some neuroweapon experts that speak about it freely in trying to alert the public and the doctors and saying, this is no longer science fiction, this is reality. So yes. You
pointed me in the direction. There is an author out there named Dr. Krishnan who wrote a book called Neuroscience Military, I believe. But I wanted to, so you were you, as you said, you actually flew down here to Miami to a very reputable doctor named Dr. Michael Hoffer, and he has a paper called Acute Findings in an Acquired Neurosensory Dysfunction. That is the name of the paper, obviously a scientific paper. But he says a review of 25 symptomatic individuals who reported a localized sensation of noise/pressure, and 10 asymptomatic individuals, roommates of those affected, who did not experience the sound pressure. The results, immediately after the exposure, the majority of individuals reported intense ear pain in one or both ears and experienced tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. All of the individuals noticed unsteadiness and features of cognitive impairment. On presentation to our center, dizziness was found in 92% of the patients, and cognitive complaints, 56%, were the most common symptoms. Formal testing revealed that 100% of individuals had an otolithic abnormality and evidence of cognitive dysfunction. You're the doctor, Dr. Ber. What is an otolithic abnormality?
So this is a part of your inner ear. If you remember anatomy at all, there are like three little loops that determine where the up and down is, and they interact with and let you orient yourself. So and this otholytic, this vestibular might be an easier word to digest. These vestibular dysfunctions in the Havana Syndrome patients are severe. Because that paper and some other papers, they received this criticism that, well, this is just a variation. Some people, even with anxiety disorder, they would feel this unsteadiness, and you can detect some vestibular abnormalities in those patients, but not to this degree. In my case, on one of my side, I have 100% loss of this function. And so I have severe vestibular dysfunction, and the signature of this directed energy exposure or attacks, it definitely attacks. We need to talk about intentionality. This is a very interesting question, but the signature of directed energy attacks is that it primarily damages your up and down axis. So you don't know, if you close your eyes, if I close my eyes instead, I will fall down. And the fact that your brain is constantly trying to figure out where up and down, it consumes a lot of your cognitive function. So your kind of cognitive broadband really shrinks. And this is where the cognitive complaints are coming from. I can't form memories. I'm actually on the medical leave, and I have I have an office job. I have a cognitive job. I cannot perform because I can't concentrate. And then on top of that, I can't predict when I get hit, and when I get attacked, I am completely dysfunctional. So I am on the medical leave. I've been on the medical leave for the past 6 months, and I'm going to stay till the end of the year and then see what happens. But it is getting worse. Honestly,
I am glad that, by the way, I'm glad that when I asked the question about being a paranoid schizophrenic, you took it really well, because he's a huge guy and he could kick my ass. So I'm glad you didn't get upset with me. And Carm, my mother always says that I suffer from hysteria. So immediately, once I leave the studio, I'm going to have ringing in my ears today. You know that, Carmela.
Yeah, of course, you'll have all the symptoms.
Dr. Ber, what did and Carm, I'll let you chime in
One second.
You know what, Carm, go ahead first, please.
Oh, thank you.
Ladies first.
Okay. No, I was thinking, is there an outside possibility that there are two different things that I'm thinking of totally outside of the box. They may be dumb, totally dumb, and maybe not so dumb. But is there a possibility that your daily occurrences now are like, epileptics also? I don't say you have epilepsy, you have what you think you have, but they have attacks from the illness, not necessarily by being attacked every day. In other words, could your original attack start this whole thing and you are not attacked every day or a few days in your home now? Because if you were, I would suggest you move to a new place.
I traveled to another state. I traveled to the city. I traveled to several places, and I'm getting attacked everywhere. Let me tell you the trip that we took not a long time ago, because we are just as puzzled. And I want to answer your question about whether these are attacks or some kind of episodes, like a secondary episode.
Yes, that's the question.
Of attack, the sudden onset, and subjectively, it feels absolutely similar to my original attacks. So you develop this sort of sense. I mean, if you're vibrating, you're vibrating. If you get in this, there's the heating up of my head. I have thermal images that these waves, these directed energy waves, they can heat up just a portion of your head up to 105 degrees. So I have thermal images showing that just one part of my head during these attacks, just one half, it heats up to 105 degrees. There's no natural condition that would produce that. I forgot what I was. What else?
The consequence of the initial attack, couldn't it produce it? The consequence of the initial attack. These are the results. These daily attacks are the consequence of the original attack, rather than every day a new attack.
Yeah, right. So, in order to answer this question scientifically, to provide evidence, you need to detect this energy. So, in that report that you mentioned, Joel, the February 1st report of the DNS CIA, the executive summary, there's a section on detection. And the only word that you can read in that section is detection. The rest of the paragraphs are still blocked out. It's still classified. So that would be the right way to answer, the proper scientific way to answer your question. If it's an attack, you should be able to detect that energy in real time. Subjectively, it feels exactly like the original attack. So I know when it starts. It feels exactly the same. It heats up my head. I get dizzy. These are not functional episodes. These are assaults. These are attacks.
By the way, Polymeropoulos reported that was one of the. He didn't want to stop working. He loved his work, if I remember this correctly. But one of the reasons he had to stop working was because of the symptoms that persisted long time after.
He still has it.
And he still has it. He's about your age.
It's
a few years younger than you.
It's akin to traumatic brain injury.
Now, I will say something else that will definitely, you are not schizophrenic, but it will make me look crazy. I remember people would not buy houses under these huge electric generator power lines because they, don't ask me what they emit, but they emit something that causes brain cancer. So there are houses that were built unbeknownst to the builders right under these things. And if you go out in the suburbs, you can see these big, huge, gigantic lines.
You don't live below a power line, do you, Dr. Ber?
No. Actually, in our neighborhood, the power lines are underground. But I investigated all this. There's a talk about 5G, cell towers, Wi-Fi, that some people are hypersensitive to electromagnetic radiation of all kinds. I mean, we turned the power down in the entire house. So there's no Wi-Fi, there's no meters, nothing, and I still felt it. Then we took a trip to West Virginia, where there's a national radio quiet zone, because this is where the deep space radar that detects where the radar is that detects signal from deep space. It was like a 12-hour trip for us in the car. So because there are no cell towers, no cell phones, they don't even allow cars with ignition because the spark produces radio signal. So we got to that zone. I was this close to the fence of that big telescope, and I still felt it. And the only thing that really you can pick up as far as a signal there is a satellite, a GPS. I'm not making any conclusions. I'm not making any speculations. I'm just telling you what we did to kind of figure out what's going on.
I should raise my kids in that zone so they're not addicted to their iPads, which they're already addicted to. But so we were talking about the DNI declassification earlier, and there was some
DNI,
Director of National Intelligence.
Sorry.
They put out a memo about this, and they declassified documents, and they say that early transient elevations in biomarkers are suggestive of cellular injury to the nervous system. So this is a legitimate issue that the United States, that the federal government is looking at. Dr. Ber, before we get into some other aspects, you have a partner, and your partner has not been affected, but has he questioned you? Is he feeling sorry for you? Is he concerned about you? Does he think you're a little nutty? What is his reaction?
He is fully supportive. We've been together for 20 years. He knows me so well. So when this started happening to me, he didn't question. He is my biggest supporter. He called every senator on the Intelligence Committee. He got me in front of our House of Representatives. I mean, he is as supportive. I couldn't have wished for a better partner. And he is a big help. And I know how other people with sort of similar complaints are not believed by their family, and they end up socially isolated. And this is not the case. I surrounded myself. I have a best friend who once again never questioned me, and I explained it. I'm not particularly warm, emotional person. I just give you the meat, and I if I don't know, I don't know. But what I do know, I speak with confidence, and people who know me truly know me, my best friend, my partner, never questioned what's happening to me.
Now, your senator is Senator Tammy Duckworth, who is an Iraq War veteran and I believe an amputee from the war, I believe. You wrote a letter to her and she responded by sending a letter to the FBI. This is part of your letter to her. You said, Dr. Hoffer, who's again the doctor here in Miami, diagnosed me with this exact condition linked to directed energy exposure. Please understand the gravity of the situation. Something that happened to the U.S. diplomats and embassy personnel in Cuba and in Russia with Mark Pomeropoulos is happening here in Illinois. The fact of exposure is determined by objective vestibular tests that are impossible to fake. Use of directed energy devices is considered by the UN to be a war crime and a crime against humanity and was given a term cyber torture. This is a letter that you wrote to the senator, and now the FBI responded to the senator not long after she wrote her letter, and the FBI writes, "Attention, Senator Duckworth. In order for the FBI to initiate an investigation of any complaint we receive, specific facts must be present to indicate that a violation of federal law within our investigative jurisdiction has occurred. Based on the information Mr. Ber has provided, we are unable to identify any violation of federal law within the investigative jurisdiction of the FBI. We are therefore unable to be of assistance." So the FBI basically bowed out of an investigation. Let me stop right here. Carmela, you've been on planet Earth close to 83 years. You are a licensed therapist. What do you make of this?
I think that what Dr. Ber needs to do is find other people who are not involved with the federal government, who experience this, create a class action lawsuit or something of that nature, because indirectly you are discriminated against. You are not, and if you cannot do it solo. There must be other people.
So that's a great segue.
Wait a minute, just wait, let him react.
No, well, Dr. Ber, are there other cases of other civilians who have been targeted, and are you in touch with them?
Yes, there are plenty of organizations that do just that, provide emotional support and sort of a sense of community, because it's a hard life. It's a life of suffering. And I'm on the advisory board of the largest organization called Targeted Justice. TargetedJustice.com is their website. We just had a meeting. We discussed various strategies. One of them is to sue the government, but because of the remote nature of this, I can't make any claims. Like, people think that this is our own government doing it to us, like experimenting and perfecting their neural weapons. I'm not making that claim, but in general, what in my particular case, what I could do is, because FBI now twice rejected request for investigation because I'm a civilian, because they don't have enough information, but they're basically sweeping it under the rug. But every agency that we went to, from DOS and CIA, they said, because you're a private citizen, you're not a federal employee, FBI is supposed to investigate it, and FBI refused. So the only thing, I couldn't sue somebody, or even a group of people could not sue anybody, because we don't know who is doing it. So if you name a wrong defendant, it will be reason for dismissal, to dismiss the case. So it is almost impossible to do anything, but
Wait
we
a
do
second.
provide a sense of,
You
yes.
don't sue because you think that it's the government who does it. Or you don't sue because you sue to have the right to be investigated. That's what you
Yes.
sue. You sue for the right to be investigated. That's a very different thing than accusing
Right.
them that they are guilty of doing something.
Correct. There are about 200 cases that are listed on our website that when people tried to sue various agencies for exactly that,
Yeah.
and every single one of them has been dismissed.
On what grounds?
National security, secrecy, wrong thing. Naming the wrong defense. When you deal with the government, there's you're asking the government to investigate yourself. In the not in my words, in the words of the community, who and the community is absolutely convinced that this is a newer weapon experimentation. And we didn't give any consent, so it's a violation of Geneva Convention. I want my government to investigate it. I really do. But suing the government is a losing proposition.
Okay, I hear.
Roughly, how many?
1 second, he didn't finish.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was another portion of the question. So there are a lot of people that claim to experience this, and I have no reason not to believe it. But it seems like I'm the only civilian who actually went through this process, because I was thinking methodically and
you are a doctor, you are a scientist.
Correct. So we speak the same language. But Dr. Hoffer told me that he did diagnose other civilians, but he could not disclose their names, obviously, because of the privacy.
That was my question. In total, I'm talking diplomats, CIA agents, people. Do we have an idea roughly how many people have come forward saying that they have Havana Syndrome, and then how many of those are civilians?
The number of civilians is hard to estimate. I really don't know. Various estimates. They range from 5,000 to 200,000. The federal employees, we know about 1,000 cases that claimed, and most of them were dismissed because they found some kind of other some kind of other condition or pre-existing condition, or they had a trauma before, which does not really exclude directed energy attacks. The main tool, knowing that directed energy weapons are real, we really should have the detection tools at our disposal. And because it's a public safety issue, because I'm public, I'm a private citizen, this is a public safety issue. This is not diplomats being attacked in foreign countries. This is a domestic public safety issue.
My expertise is limited on Mark Polymeropoulos. And he told us that in the beginning, in 2007, don't hold me to the exact, watch the episode that we have on Mark Polymeropoulos. We have an episode a few months back. And he said to us that in the beginning, they wouldn't even treat him in the medical system for the CIA agents, because they didn't recognize that it's a real condition until they did, and now he gets treatment because it's recognized as the real thing. So they went one step further and they are recognized as the real thing. Okay? Now I have another question afterwards. Answer this one.
I have a little comment to your statement. Doctors can diagnose it. We know how to diagnose it. There's literature published. There's a CDC report that finally became public. So doctors know how to diagnose. The government does not recognize any civilians with Havana Syndrome, because if they did, we would be included in that Havana Act.
What about your insurance? Does your insurance recognize? Does your medical insurance recognize it?
It does, and the medical insurance company that provides financing the medical leave also recognize it. And I have a full, complete diagnosis with traumatic brain syndrome, with vestibular disorder due to directed energy, also known as Havana Syndrome. This is my diagnosis that the doctors gave me. The neurologist gave me the traumatic encephalopathy. The Dr. Hoffer gave me this vestibular disorder with the directed energy. He called it acquired neurosensory dysfunction, but this is basically the term he came up for Havana Syndrome. So the medical recognition is there. There's an expert in neuroweapons, Dr. James Giordano, who made a comment at a medical conference. I basically forced him. I asked him that question, and he admitted that yes, they are civilians affected and validated that they really, really do have Havana Syndrome. But the government doesn't.
I hear you. I hear you. So that the government recognizes government employees like CIA or diplomats. Now I have to tell you, you are not paranoid, but I am. I am a little paranoid on the edges, I always say. So I am thinking another thing too. During World War II, just as a introduction, we were hiding in Hungary, in Budapest, and the Russians liberated us, okay? The Soviet army, the Red Army. We were hiding there and they liberated us. That's how I survived. So they did something very nice. Since then, the Russians have done certain things that weren't so nice, like they killed spies in England, Navalny, they poisoned Navalny recently, as you must have heard.
Little war in Ukraine.
You heard the Navalny situation. Then they did the little war that's still running in the Ukraine. And
are you suggesting the Russians are behind this?
Yeah, there is a possibility. There is a possibility that the Russians are behind this.
You are the FBI, Carm.
What did he say?
He said you are the FBI. There's also a possibility.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you, I do work for the FBI.
Dr. Ber, I'm curious about this. So how did you find Dr. Hoffer? What kind of doctor is he? And tell me what it was like when you came down here to Miami to be examined.
Well, why don't we talk a minute more about the Russians? I mean, I'm curious. I am curious. Why? I mean, there is one connecting factor here is that you were born on Russian territory and you went to medical school in Russia. So there is maybe, it's a very far out paranoid.
Dr. Ber, do you think the Russians are targeting you, is Carmela's question.
I do not think so. But because it would be very ballsy for the Russians to do something on the US territory. I think that would get attention of our intelligence agencies. So,
I mean,
but
the
I
United States
can't-
has a
You
long
don't let
history.
into-
The United States has a long history of running experiments on their citizens, right? So do you tend to think it's something along those lines?
It's a possibility, because neural weapons that produce brain damage, ultimately the military wants to use it on people. So you can't experiment on mice and get the same result. You have to fine tune it on real people. And so that's not out of the realm of possibilities that civilians, without their consent, are used for that purpose. But this is a speculation, and this is where I'm going to stop.
Now, back to my question, because
and
I think it is
the
important.
Russians was left out.
He said he does not think it was the Russians.
Okay, I accept that.
Back to my question. So how did you find Dr. Hoffer? What kind of doctor is Dr. Hoffer here in Miami? And what was this experience like? And what was the diagnosis ultimately, which I think you already mentioned that last part.
So after I had the seizures and when it really escalated to the point that I had to absolutely, it was about my health. And so local doctors, local neurologists don't know anything about it. That they never seen these symptoms. They couldn't diagnose anything. So I did my own research. I started looking for who else has these symptoms. I go straight to the literature. I don't browse, BuzzFeed or I go to PubMed. I go to the sources. And I found Dr. Hoffer's publication. Dr. Hoffer is a very respected otoneurologist. So oto means ear, and neurologist. So it's the intersection of the inner ear, and the outer, the whole ear, and the nervous system. Because ultimately, the way we hear sound is it's converted into a signal between the neurons. So that's his specialty. And because the gravity center, how we sense gravity, is also located in the ear. It's a whole system. So that's his specialty. And this is why in February of 2017, he lectured about it. And you can find his lectures. He got a call from the Department of Defense, and they said, "We got a situation. We have these people in Cuba that are experiencing these vestibular symptoms. They get dizzy, they get ringing in their head, they hear things that other people don't hear, and it's all connected, and they cognitively decline very fast, and they suffer. It's painful. They get nauseous. It's not a pretty picture. Like, if you saw me during the attack, I just crawl into the corner and moan my head, my lungs out. I mean, this is by any definition, this is torture. So I contacted Dr. Hoffer. I got a referral from my neurologist, of course. Contacted Dr. Hoffer. We had a telehealth conversation, and he invited me. He said, "Please make an appointment, but you will need to spend the whole day doing vestibular tests." And then COVID hit, and that delayed it by several months. And finally, when they opened, I finally made the trip exactly 2 years ago. Dr. Hoffer is a very good physician. And he said, "The only thing I can tell you is that is whether you are like the Havana cohort or not. And after the day of vestibular test, and I want to emphasize that these tests are impossible to fake. And if you're faking, they will know exactly, because the paper has been already published. So you can come to Dr. Hoffer, go to otoneurologist and say, I have these symptoms. Now let's test your vestibular organs, and those tests are objective. So in the severity of these vestibular abnormalities is very pronounced. It's not like a 5-10% difference. This is like, well, I told you there was on one side 100% loss. So I found him very pleasant, very friendly, very professional. And he said, this is the only thing I can do. I can do for you. Try to contact Dr. Giordano, who is a neuroweapon expert at Georgetown. I tried. I couldn't reach out to Dr. Giordano. He's a world-known neuroweapon expert, who is also professor of bioethics. And also, he said, try vestibular rehab. I told him that my attacks are continuous. And this is what happened with vestibular rehab. I would go and do these exercises, and then the next day I would get attacked, come back for the next rehab, and all the progress has been erased. So this is why it is important to stop this attack, because my vestibular function, my cognitive function. I sent you that report from QEEG that shows a broken connection in every network. This is what Havana Syndrome is now called. It's a neurological. It's a brain network disruption disease. It disrupts, because that energy disrupts connection between neurons. So my brain looks like a battlefield. When I saw these images, I was terrified, and I knew that these attacks are continuing. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, my brain aged in these last 3 years about 30 years. I mean, everybody says you look good. Yes, because I exercise, because this is the best thing you can do for your brain, because resistance training releases brain-derived neurotropic factor, and it heals your brain. But it's like you have an open wound and you're trying to give a blood transfusion, but the wound is still bleeding. This is the situation. I get attacked every day, and it doesn't allow my brain to heal itself. And this is happening to a civilian, so it can happen to me, and I'm nobody. I'm just a private citizen. Then it can happen to anybody. Mm-hmm. And the FBI doesn't even want to investigate. Well, imagine that happens to you. Imagine that it happens to your children. Imagine that it happens to your loved ones. This is a public safety issue that should be on the front page. People, it probably has to become a political issue, because we have church's investigation of MK Ultra in the 70s. This deserves congressional investigation, because people are suffering. Regular citizens are suffering, and the evidence I have, you just can't sweep it under the rug and pretend it's not happening. This is as solid of evidence as you can obtain for this condition.
totally unrelated. But sometimes when you free associate and you say like the most far out dumb thing, something may pop out of it, another idea or another thought. A few weeks, everything I learned this year with our 63 podcasts. One is more fascinating than the other. They're different topics. And one of them was with a hockey player who got the Stanley Cup twice.
Daniel Carcillo, who's the co-founder of, founder of Wisana Health in Chicago.
But let me. Can I just tell briefly to Dr. Ber what was this about? Why am I mentioning it? It's very far out, okay? It almost 100% has nothing to do or very little. But this relatively young man was playing hockey since childhood and had a very large number of concussions, brain concussions. And his best friend at the age of 34 went to take a nap in the afternoon and never woke up because their brains were damaged severely from the concussions. He became suicidal. You should listen to this episode too. So I gave you 2 homeworks to listen to 2 different episodes of our podcast. This man was on the verge of suicide because he felt so depressed and so out of sorts and had no, his brain was really damaged. And he went and got involved, and I don't say you should do this, but it's an idea of medicating it. Okay? He now started with, what's the name, Tyson?
So, Mike Tyson is an investor. The company
you know who
is
Mike Tyson is? Mike Tyson?
If you're on this earth,
yes.
you know who
Mike Tyson and this young...
That's like asking if you've ever heard of bread.
Okay. Mike Tyson and this man started a company and they are getting seed money to micro dosage of certain mushrooms, and he claims that it is a miracle and that he does it already for 3 years, and the emphasis is on micromanage.
Carm, you were almost 100% correct. I just want to clarify something. Mike Tyson is an investor, not a founder. The person who founded the company played for the Chicago Blackhawks. He's a professional hockey player. He won 2 Stanley Cups. You should look him up. His name is Daniel Carcillo. He was a fighter in the NHL. There's someone called an enforcer. And he was involved in over 200 brutal fights as an NHL player in the hockey league. He suffers from traumatic brain injury. He tried every remedy under the sun, everything imaginable.
And he was on the verge of suicide.
And he was thinking of ways to kill himself, and he has children. He started with psilocybin.
Joel, you don't have to let him watch it. We don't go into that.
You just took 40 minutes to explain something inaccurately, and I'm taking 30 seconds to explain it correctly.
No, okay.
And now I'll get hate mail from our viewers who say I interrupt you.
The viewers
everyone yells at me because I'm young. This one does not do her homework. This one does not do her homework and gives inaccurate information. Long story short, he uses what they call magic mushrooms or psilocybin, and Carmela's words of wisdom is you might want to look at that. I actually suggested that to Mark Pomeropoulos. It's supposed to be a miracle drug for the brain.
Here
we go.
What is it?
Like resetting what you said, like the neurotransmitters.
Yes. It's a far out idea, but you at least you feel like you're trying to do something.
I want just to feel like I'm doing something. I want to actually do something. And thank you very much for this suggestion. I'm very familiar with psilocybin research. I know that it has some extremely interesting effects. The whole concussion territory in neurology. Nobody, well, let's say the NFL players or football players, or they get these repeated injuries. So before you start rehabilitating the rehabilitation program, you stop exposure to these injuries. And that's all I'm asking. I can do the rehabilitation. I can do psilocybin. I can do other things, but let's stop the injury, the assaults that are damaging my brain and brains of other civilians who are suffering from this. Diagnosed or not diagnosed, I happen to be properly diagnosed, and I happen to be just like have the abnormalities that fit into that Cuban Havana cohort. So that's why I've been given this diagnosis. But you don't start doing something to your brain until you stop the injury.
I hear you. I hear you. I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, did you hear anecdotally or statistically of after a while the attacks stopping?
What, psilocybin?
No, the attacks that you are experiencing now.
Oh.
Tapering off or slowing down or stopping?
Well, according to Mark Palmeropoulos, his attack stopped. So he is not maybe getting much better, but he's not being attacked. I have not, like, supposedly the Cuban diplomats, when they returned, from the reporting that I've seen, they are not going through the attacks. They're just rehabbing their brain. So they're doing rehabilitation. They go to Walter Reed. Now, John Hopkins has a program, but it's all about rehabilitation. Who is going to stop the assaults? That's what I'm asking for. And have I heard somebody whose attacks have been stopped? Yeah, Cuban diplomats. Mark Palmeropoulos. I heard of them.
He stopped?
And the attacks stop, but the symptoms are still there.
The attacks stop, but the symptoms are still there.
Okay. Carmela, I'm going to pose this question, 2 more questions, and we have to wrap it up. One to Carmela, and then the final one, of course, to the good doctor, Dr. Ber. Carmela, I'm going to ask this question again. You've been on this earth for almost 83 years. Number 1, do you believe Dr. Ber? And number 2, what is going on here, in your opinion?
I do believe that he's feeling the daily attacks. I don't know 100%, no offense, sorry, I'm being very honest about what's going on in my brain. I am not 100% sure if it is not that you got so attacked initially that you are not recovering, that every day you experience a new attack. But I don't know if in your house now, that looks like very normal to me, that you are getting attacked every day. Are you in different locations in the house when you are attacked?
Dr. Ber, this was a trick question because Carmela really should have said, honestly, I have no idea. I know nothing about this. But
no, I never say that. I will never say the words, I don't know anything about this. This is against my deepest belief.
But now she's asking a million questions. But the good thing for you is she believes you.
I believe you. Of course I believe you. You are the one who is going through hell.
He's a nice Jewish boy. Exactly. Dr. Ber, final question to you. Why do you, I asked you this at the beginning, why do you think you're being attacked, and does this end?
He's the chosen one for this. Why?
A fair question. Somebody is doing it to me and you're asking me why? In any other situation, You should be asking that question.
Wait a second.
Whoever-
You are victim shaming now by asking why are they attacking him?
I appreciate that answer. Explain what you were just going to say.
You are victim shaming.
It's important. Please continue.
I'm not sure. I think I've said everything. I know what I was going to say, Carmela. I understand your skepticism, and it's very hard to imagine. This was the hardest part for me to accept, that actually I was wishing that this was some kind of psychiatric, neurological disorder, because that can be treated. The hardest thing for me was to accept that somebody is intentionally doing it to me. And once they do it one time, what's stopping them from doing it every day? And I think this is what's happening. This is what's so hard for people to imagine, that somebody would do that to another human being without a particular reason. But the world is full of psychopaths. This is a part of human nature. There are people that enjoy harming other people. There are people who can justify a lot of things, including experimenting on civilians without their consent for whatever idea they think they value. The state of science, of neuroscience, is so much more advanced than the general public understands. This is so hard for people to imagine. But just think about your cell phone. There are maybe 7 billion cell phones on the planet, and yet the satellite signal can find that single number and call just that number because it has that specific frequency. And guess what? Everything has a frequency. Your DNA has a resonant frequency. Your brain has the resonant frequency. If it's a material object, just like a musical fork, it just like if there's a frequency is right, it will start vibrating. The same, our molecules, our brain, the matter we made of is no different. And so this is a simple concept, but then you put all this modern technology on top of it. And you read these books that literally talk about these military developments in neuro warfare, brain degradation technology, that you don't really have to kill an enemy, you just have to make them stupid. Who are you going to experiment on? If you really believe that we need that weapon and you break the rules, I can see, as a speculation, hypothetically, I can imagine that. Can you?
May I say something? I think that the easiest way of one country on this small planet to win over another country, just make everybody in the other country stupid.
You should be a war strategist, you military strategist.
I am.
Dr. Ber, thank you so much for sharing your story. What is your website again?
My personal social media platform is Twitter, and you can it's P Sardonicus, because everything else was taken. But
I like it.
I'm
So
on
it's at P Sardonicus on Twitter.
Correct. And I'm on the advisory board of organization called targetedjustice.com. It's for civilians affected by this technology. We call themselves targeted individuals, and people with Havana Syndrome, because this is a part of sort of one technological program. And it's very controversial. They call targeted individuals basically bad names. Basically, they think that they're all paranoid schizophrenic. But apparently I'm not, and I have Havana Syndrome.
If you're interested in Dr. Ber's story, targetedjustice.com or P. Sardonicus on Twitter. And right on cue, as I'm wrapping up, Carmela, you're raising your hand. One final question. We are running out of time.
I have the urge to finish with this statement by Henry Kissinger.
Finish.
Who, I think it was Henry Kissinger, who said that even paranoid people like I have real enemies. Even paranoid people have real enemies. So even if I'm paranoid, I still have real enemies. In other words, we all must be a little paranoid because you don't know who your enemies are.
That's true. It's hard to digest, but thank you.
Hard to digest, but Dr. Ber, listen, thanks so much for sharing your story. I know you're not feeling well. We hope you feel better. We hope you're not targeted. We hope you come back and keep us updated as you get more information. And
let us know. Let us know how is it going, really.
And stay healthy. And also, I'd love some tips on how to get arms 1/40th the size of your arms one of these days.
He likes to lift weights.
Come with us to the gym.
I will.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
We'll be right
so
back
much,
with
and
a new
all the best
schmooze.
to you.
Welcome back. It's time for the news schmooze.
So, Carm, what do you make of that? It's tough for me to say. I'll tell you. I remember doing a live shot in front of the Capitol when I was working for Fox News Channel with my favorite photographer of all time. Shout out to the great, Les Baker too, but to Phil LaCroix. Les actually wears my hat, so he's tied as my favorite photographer. But Phil LaCroix and I were out there, and a woman came up to us, and she seemed so incredibly normal. And then 5-10 minutes into it, she's the daughter of some famous senator. People were coming to get her. Obviously, a very paranoid, schizophrenic person, but she appeared to be very intelligent and with it at first. And we couldn't get her to stop talking to us. But Dr. Ber, I mean, he really seems...
Well, we saw him already,
Yeah, he seems incredibly genuine. What do you make of it? Is he?
No, I tell you what I make out of it, of this.
Yes. Please tell me.
I think he's very bright, very learned, and because of his circumstances, because of this brain thing that he's experiencing, he researched it, and he has the medical background for it, and he has the motivation to learn as much as possible, and unwittingly through his condition, he became an expert on this field.
He just texted me, and I'm going to read it out loud, from Dr. Len Ber. Thank you, Joel. Please give Carmela my kind regards and thank her for her excellent questions. No one ever says thank you. It's unbelievable. And here you're sitting here. That was a real opportunity to tell my story, and I really appreciate it. I mean, he sounds like an incredibly genuine guy. I'm curious what the feedback on this episode is going to be. I wonder if people are going to say, why are you giving a platform to a crazy guy? Or if people are going to say, this is a really important story. I'm glad you told it.
I said, I love the people who watch us, and I love them really more than the ones who don't watch us. But people will have all sorts of opinions. That's what's beautiful. Some people will say A, some people will say X.
Can someone please say that I'm doing a good job and send me a compliment?
Yeah, please, I appeal as his mother.
Did you see Dr.
Have pity on my son.
Did you see the size of Dr. Ber's arms? You can see him on his Twitter page
Wait a minute,
at
does it
P.
mean,
Sardonicus.
You said, did you see Dr. Bears arms. Do you mean he bears arms?
He bears arms. That's a great thing, Carm. He bears arms. Okay, on to the news schmooze. A new Florida law prohibiting abortion after 15 weeks, with some exceptions, violates religious freedom of rights of Jews, in addition to the state's constitution privacy protections. That is a claim a synagogue is making here in the state of Florida. The lawsuit filed by the congregation Lador Vador of Boynton Beach. What does Lador Vador mean?
Generation to generation.
Contends.
Dor is generation, everybody.
The lawsuit filed by the congregation Lador Vador of Boynton Beach contends that the law that takes effect July 1st here in the state of Florida violates Jewish teachings which state abortion, quote unquote, is required if necessary to protect the health, mental, or physical well-being of the woman and for other reasons. As such, the act prohibits Jewish women from practicing their faith free of government intrusion, and this violates their privacy rights and religious freedom, says the lawsuit filed Friday in Leon County Circuit Court, which is Tallahassee, which is the Dan Markel case. What do you think of this? This is like an about face because Orthodox Jews do not believe in abortion, and now this synagogue, Lador Vador, is saying it's violating.
Who says this is an Orthodox synagogue?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it goes contrary to what Orthodox Jews believe. Do you agree with these people at Lador Vador?
Wait a second. Sometimes you have to do an amniotic. Now I'm an expert in this too. Is there anything that I'm not an expert in?
No.
Amniotic fluid tests sometimes have to be done later on than 15th week. Yes, it's probably 16th, 17th week. But
Does it surprise you that a synagogue is filing a lawsuit against an abortion law?
If this is an Orthodox synagogue, then my name is Pietro.
We'll look it up. On to the next story, and there's a reason I picked this story. When reports surfaced in May, just this past May, that the Supreme Court wanted to overturn abortion rights, many wondered how the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg might have responded. Now they don't have to wait. The AI model tries to recreate the mind of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think they're wrong on the law, but on the facts, no, said a simulation of Ginsburg, who died in 2020 when asked about the Supreme Court's upcoming decision on Roe v. Wade. The answer came not from Ginsburg's numerous court opinions, but an artificial intelligence model of the late justice. Whether it's good or bad, it's settled, and therefore it's not my business to think about it, the RBG robot concluded. This is all based on 27 years of Ginsburg's legal writings on the Supreme Court. Now, this is fascinating for a few reasons. There was an episode on 60 Minutes recently. They have so much tape on a lot of Holocaust survivors, and they shot them in a way that it's almost like a holographic, that they can now go back and ask these Holocaust survivors who are dead their opinions on things. And they're now asking Ruth Bader Ginsburg her opinion on things when she's no longer here. Does it creep you out?
No. I think now you're going to get a very long. Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What they were setting up as the information bank was all her legal writings and decisions and so forth. So it was based on the law. Hence, they could predict how she would respond in this case. However, one of the survivor giving an opinion on a dead survivor giving an opinion is, in my perception, totally wrong to be able to think that you are able to predict with artificial intelligence. And I tell you why. I believe absolutely, this is one of the things I believe in life, is that you make, as a human being, you can all your life think A, and tomorrow morning wake up and on the same topic, after thinking about it for 83 years a certain way, I could wake up the next day and think about it completely the opposite. That's the human brain so far.
I'll tell you why.
You understand what I'm
100%
saying?
I understand. I'll tell you why. Why do you think I picked the story?
Because of the guy we had before.
Wrong. I'll tell you why I picked the story.
Oh, gee.
Because we're on episode 63. I'm building up my database of you. You were unable to make it to Podfest in Orlando. I took a cardboard cutout. I tell you, I'm not going to be able to survive when you're no longer here. But now, what my plan is, I'm going to walk around life with your cardboard cutout. I'm going to keep you in my car when you're no longer here. And with
Please.
artificial intelligence software, I'll be able to ask you questions. And it'll be just like having you here. I once met a woman in Tucson, Arizona, who lived on a nudist colony, and she invited me. She was actually really good looking too. She was a caretaker, very smart girl. She was working woman. She worked for Coca-Cola. She was from Atlanta originally, and then just said, I'm giving up corporate life, moved to a nudist colony in Tucson. Really good looking, by the way. And she took care of a man named Bill, and he died. And she kept his urn with his ashes in the front seat of her car. Just because at the nudist colony, she shared a room, didn't feel comfortable with the ashes there. So everywhere she went, she drove with Bill, with her urn, with his ashes.
Well, I am not going to be cremated. That was done by Hitler. I don't have to repeat that.
But I will have a cardboard cutout of you.
I will be pretty big to put in the backseat dead.
The cardboard cutout folds, and I'll have AI.
I know. I was shocked when I saw it.
By the way, I don't know if you know this. I think I told you. I have saved all of yours and Dad's voicemails for like the last 5 years.
God, this guy is sentimental.
Unfortunately, by the way, I put my son's hair in my drawer. We cut his hair this past week.
Oh my God! One hair. Hericle, what is it? Follicle of hair? Or
follicle.
Follicle fell on the ground. You picked it up.
Sorry, Larry Levin, for correcting my mother. Sorry. Please forgive me. On to the last.
I love you, Larry Levin.
On to the last story. I thought I would lift everyone's spirits since we were talking about really heavy stuff. Preliminary evidence suggests the crash of a China Eastern Airlines jet in March may be the latest such tragedy. A person familiar with the investigation said, if confirmed, it would make it the fourth such case since 2013, bringing the total number of deaths to 554. What are we talking about here? So as aircraft become more reliable and pilots grow less susceptible to errors, fatalities now caused by murder-suicides are becoming an increasingly large share of the total of air passenger deaths. While international acts traditionally aren't included in air crash statistics, they would be the second largest category of deaths worldwide if they were, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. This makes no sense. By comparison, 1,745 people died as a result of pilot error or mechanical failures or other causes on Western-built jets from 2012 to 2021. It's scary, said Malcolm Brenner, a former human behavior investigator with the United States National Transportation Safety Board, who worked on the probe of the 1999 Egypt Air Flight 990, which was found to be an intentional act. It is a major cause of concern. It's one the industry needs to address. So now we don't have to worry about mechanical failure on planes.
Now we have to have a psychological test.
Now we worried about depressed pilots that are intentionally. This happened not long ago in Europe. A pilot crashed into the Swiss Alps. What a way to go. Well, anyway.
In Europe, it couldn't crash into the Himalayas.
Just check your pilot. You know what I do? I bring my kids into the cockpit. If they act normal and are nice to my kids, I know we're okay. If
they're always nice before they kill themselves.
Last pilot offered my kids some alcohol. No. All right. On to 3 questions for Grandma. We'll be right back.
Okay, do it fast.
It's time now for 3 questions for Grandma.
Carmel, I'll do it as fast as I want to do it. Sorry, Larry Levin, again, for insulting my mother.
Listen, you should just say SLL.
Sorry, Larry Levin. Okay, 3 questions for Grandma.
I think this is funny.
From Vita Aaliyah,
The 8-year-old.
the 8-year-old. All the kids came into my bed. All 3 are sick today. None of them are going to camp. Both dogs in my bed as well. Ethel, the puppy, who is a boxer, sleeps flat on her back with her tongue hanging out. That leads into the question from Vita. Why does Ethel sleep like a dead dog?
No, she doesn't sleep like a dead dog.
You know, she sleeps like a safe dog. She's trusting. No dog would sleep on its back. I've read this.
I think that Ethel looks at the children. She sees that they are lying on their back, so she imitates them.
And by the way, I took Ethel to the doctor, the vet, last week. The next day, Mabel woke up with the most hoarse cough I ever heard.
All right.
Today, I woke up, Ethel is now coughing like Mabel. Now I have to go back. Literally go broke just from this. On to the next question. From Zizi Elise, who just turned 6. Why, when you charge a phone, it has to stay plugged in? Why don't you just plug it in? Why does it take electricity so long? Why doesn't it just charge instantly? Why do you have to leave it there?
I have the answer to that.
Carmela, what's the
latest phone that I got after 4 years of my other phone, an Apple phone, they sold me a charger that charges rapidly. You just lay down the phone on top of it, and 20 minutes later, it's completely charged.
Last question.
Or even less.
I think this is a repeat question, but it's an innocent repeat if so.
What is this? This is Judah, the 3-year-old?
This is also Z. Judah was dead asleep. I didn't want to wake him up. Why do you get gray hair?
I think what is it called? The thing in it that...
Follicle again?
No. But we have it also on our skin. That's
the melanin,
I can't remember now.
Good answer.
But the thing in it is like it doesn't produce it anymore.
Listen, I should have mentioned this off the top. Carmela is now on TikTok. We're building this giant machine called Surviving the Survivor. Carmela, do you have any final comments today?
Yes, my son always had a rich fantasy life.
Are you worried about targeted attacks? You personally?
Very frankly?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's kind of heavy. Love you, America. We'll be back Friday with more of the Dan Markel murder. Talk to you then. Love you, America.
Thank you for watching us, America.